Hi there. Welcome to NapTime History channel. Tonight we're standing on the bustling docks of Southampton, April 10th, 1912, and you're about to board the RMS Titanic, except you're not sipping champagne with the Astors. No, you're clutching a third-class ticket that cost you 3 months' wages, and you're already learning that unsinkable doesn't mean unsurvivable, especially when you're poor, foreign, and several decks below the waterline. You probably won't survive this. Statistically speaking, only 25% of third-class passengers made it, compared to 62% in first class. But hey, at least your ticket was affordable. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these bedtime stories travel. All right, let's begin the story. You're shuffling forward in a mass of humanity. The smell of coal smoke and unwashed bodies already thicken the air. The Southampton docks teem with over 700 fellow third-class passengers, and you're all being herded toward the ship's rear entrances like livestock, which, let's be honest, is exactly how White Star Line views you. While first-class passengers glide up the forward gangway with their Louis Vuitton trunks, yes, that was already a flex in 1912. You're being inspected for infectious diseases and head lice by harried medical officers who examine 30 people per minute. The class divide starts before you even set foot on the ship. First-class passengers board at leisure between 9:30 and 11 o'clock a.m., posed for photographers, and were personally escorted to their suites. You've been standing in line since 7 a.m. because third-class boarding happens first, not out of courtesy, but because they want you stowed away in steerage before the important people arrive. It's like modern airport boarding, except instead of overhead bin space, you're competing for breathable air. Your fellow travelers speak a babble of languages: Swedish, Finnish, Arabic, Chinese, Yiddish, creating a linguistic chaos that will become deadly important in about 4 days. The White Star Line specifically doesn't provide translators, operating on the assumption that someone in your group probably speaks enough English to explain the rules. Spoiler alert, they don't, and those untranslated evacuation orders will kill people. You notice children everywhere, darting between adults' legs, their parents trying desperately to keep families together in the crush. Some folks have sewn their children's names and destination addresses into their clothes, a grim practicality that makes you wonder what they know that you don't. One woman near you has tied her 3 kids together with a rope, like the world's most depressing daisy chain. The medical inspection is a particular humiliation. Men and women are separated, told to strip to their undergarments, and checked for signs of trachoma, tuberculosis, and other diseases that might make America reject you at Ellis Island. They literally flip your eyelids inside out with a button hook, the same tool used for fastening boots, looking for infection. One man ahead of you is turned away for a persistent cough. His wife has to choose between boarding without him or forfeiting their non-refundable tickets. She boards. You'll never learn if they reunited. The inspection process reveals something historians still debate: whether the Titanic's officers deliberately undercounted third-class passengers. Official records show 709 third-class passengers, but survivor testimony suggests the number was higher. Some speculate that extra passengers were smuggled aboard by crew members taking bribes, creating ghost passengers who wouldn't be missed when they drowned. Others argue it was simple incompetence. When you're processing hundreds of people who don't speak your language, accurate counting becomes optional. You're finally approved, stamped like a passport, and directed toward the aft well deck. But here's where it gets interesting. You're not actually walking onto the Titanic yet. Third-class passengers board via the shelter deck, entering through what's essentially the servant's entrance. You catch glimpses of the ship's magnificent profile, those four massive funnels that everyone's talking about, though only three are functional. The fourth is basically a very expensive decoration for symmetry. As you climb the steep gangway, your cheap leather shoes slipping on the salt-dampened wood, you overhear two crew members joking in Scouse accents about another load of emigrants. One mentions that the ship's baker has already started complaining about having to make 1,000 pounds of bread daily just for steerage. The other laughs and says something about feeding time at the zoo. You pretend not to understand, but you file it away. These are the people who'll decide whether you're worth saving later. The moment you step inside, the ship swallows you whole. You're directed down, always down, through a maze of identical corridors that smell of fresh paint and industrial disinfectant. The pristine white walls mock you with their temporary cleanliness. Give it 2 days, and these passages will reek of vomit, unwashed bodies, and overflowing toilets. A harried steward, barely older than 16, shoves a cabin assignment card into your hand without looking at you. G64, he mutters, already moving to the next bewildered family. You have no idea where G64 is, and he's not about to tell you. You descend metal stairs that ring with the footsteps of hundreds. First-class passengers have elevators, 3 of them, operated by uniformed boys who'll die at their posts keeping those lifts running. You have your legs and a growing understanding that this ship is designed to keep you as far from the paying customers as physically possible. The Titanic isn't one ship. It's 3 separate vessels stacked atop each other, with yours at the bottom, G-deck. You're now below the waterline, though you won't realize this until water starts rushing through the portholes. The corridor stretches endlessly, punctuated by identical white doors. You count G60, G61, G62. The numbers are your only navigation in this fluorescent-lit purgatory. Some passengers have already gotten lost, wandering the halls like ghosts, too embarrassed to admit they can't find their quarters. One elderly woman sits on her suitcase, weeping softly in what sounds like Croatian. You find G64 and push open the door to discover your home for the next 5 days. A closet with delusions of grandeur. 4 berths are stacked like library shelves, with about 18 inches of clearance between them. You'll share this space with 3 strangers who, judging by the belongings already claimed, include a Norwegian laborer, work boots under the bottom bunk. Someone who really likes garlic. The smell is already assertive. And what appears to be a young mother, cloth diapers draped optimistically over the porthole. The amenities are laughable. One small sink that produces a trickle of rusty water, no chairs, no wardrobe, just hooks on the walls where moisture will collect and ensure your clothes never quite dry. The porthole, if you're lucky enough to have one, is bolted shut. Ship's regulations, they say, though the real reason is that open portholes in rough seas would flood steerage faster than you can say women and children first. But here's the thing historians argue about. Was third class accommodation on Titanic actually progressive for its time? White Star Line marketed these quarters as revolutionary, and compared to older ships where steerage meant sleeping in open holds on straw mattresses, individual cabins were luxurious. The company even boasted about electric lighting in every room, neglecting to mention that the single bare bulb would be your only source of light, controlled by a master switch that turned off at 10 p.m. sharp. You test your bunk. The mattress is stuffed with straw and covered in a rough ticking that will leave patterns on your skin. The pillow feels like it's filled with golf balls. The single thin blanket is stamped White Star Line in letters large enough to discourage theft, though you immediately start calculating how many you could wrap around yourself if the ship starts sinking. Spoiler, not enough to prevent hypothermia, but your optimism is touching. Now, the bathroom situation requires immediate investigation. You follow the smell of industrial strength carbolic soap down the corridor to discover the communal facilities. 2 bathtubs for 700 people? The math isn't encouraging. There's already a sign-up sheet that extends into next week, though you'll quickly learn that bribing the bathroom steward with cigarettes jumps the queue. The toilets, a grand total of 2 per 50 passengers, already have lines. Men are muttering about using the sink in their cabins. You pretend to be scandalized while mentally noting this as a viable option. Your fellow passengers are already establishing the pecking order. The Scandinavians have claimed the forward sections. The Irish dominate midship, and various Eastern European groups hold the aft territories. It's like prison gangs, but with more accordion music. You learn quickly that mattresses can be traded, that the top bunks are preferable, heat rises, and you're directly above the boiler rooms, and that leaving anything valuable unattended is essentially a donation to the Commonwealth. The class barriers aren't just theoretical, they're physical. Iron gates separate third class from the upper decks, locked not out of cruelty, the White Star Line insists, but to satisfy American immigration law. The U.S. Public Health Service demands physical separation between steerage and other passengers to prevent disease spread. These gates have special locks that can theoretically be opened in emergencies. Theoretically, the keys are somewhere, someone knows where. Probably. As night falls, the ship's hierarchy becomes audible. Above you, second-class passengers walk to dinner on D-deck, their footsteps muffled by carpet. Further up, in the rarefied air of B-deck, you can faintly hear an orchestra playing. Down here in steerage, someone's already started an impromptu ceilidh in the common room, the sound of fiddles and dancing feet creating their own democracy of joy. You fall asleep to the throb of engines just 2 decks below, a mechanical lullaby that will, in 4 days' time, fall terrifyingly silent. The first morning aboard, you wake to a cacophony that makes a railway station sound peaceful, Children shriek in at least 12 languages. Someone's practicing accordion at what feels like 5 a.m., and the engines maintain their relentless percussion beneath your feet. Your bunkmate, the garlic enthusiast, is already dressed and informs you cheerfully, in broken English, that breakfast ends in 20 minutes. You've overslept the first meal service because nobody bothered to explain the schedule, and that accordion player has been at it since 4:30. You stumble toward the dining saloon, following the stream of humanity and the smell of industrial strength coffee. The third-class dining room spans the width of the ship, filled with long tables bolted to the floor and benches that seat 10 people per side. It's like a school cafeteria designed by someone who thinks poor people don't need personal space. You squeeze onto a bench between a Finnish logger who takes up enough space for 2 people and a thin woman clutching a baby that immediately starts grabbing for your food. The meal is actually decent. Historians still debate whether White Star Line provided good food out of kindness or calculated that well-fed passengers complain less. You get porridge, they call it oatmeal, to sound fancy. Fresh bread, margarine, marmalade, and coffee that could strip paint. The portions are generous, probably because the company learned that hungry immigrants tend to start impromptu riots. A Swedish family across from you has figured out that unclaimed portions can be pocketed for later, wrapping bread in handkerchiefs with practiced efficiency. But here's the catch. Meal times are strictly regimented. Breakfast from 7:00 to 8:30, dinner at noon, tea at 6:00 p.m. Miss your slot, and you're out of luck until the next meal. The dining room can't accommodate everyone at once, so you eat in shifts determined by your cabin location. Naturally, nobody explained this system, so half the passengers show up at random times and get turned away by stewards who seem to enjoy saying no in multiple languages. After breakfast, you attempt to find fresh air. The ship's designers, in their infinite wisdom, allocated exactly 2 small deck spaces for third-class passengers, one at the stern, the poop deck, which, yes, everyone finds hilarious, and another small area forward. Combined, these spaces offer about as much room as a modern tennis court for 700 people. First class has multiple promenades, a gymnasium, Turkish baths, and a swimming pool. You have a bench if you're lucky, and a view of the ship's wake. The deck access involves navigating more of those locked gates. They're opened at specific times, 10 a.m. to noon, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., weather permitting. A bored seaman stands guard, ostensibly to prevent disease-carrying passengers from contaminating the upper classes, but really just enjoying his tiny kingdom of arbitrary power. You learn quickly that cigarettes are currency here too. 2 woodbines buy you an extra hour topside. On deck, you discover the third-class social hierarchy in full display. The forward deck belongs to families with children who've established an elaborate rotation system for the single bench. Young men claim the railings, where they smoke and spit into the ocean while discussing job prospects in America. A group of Lebanese women have created a makeshift salon in a wind-protected corner, braiding each other's hair and sharing gossip that transcends language barriers. The afternoon finds you exploring what entertainment the ship provides for steerage. The answer, almost nothing. There's a general room with bare walls, hard benches, and a piano that's slightly out of tune. But your fellow passengers don't need White Star Line's help to amuse themselves. By evening, the space transforms into an impromptu social club. Irish step dancers compete with Norwegian folk singers, while a group of Russian Jews has started what appears to be the world's most intense chess tournament. You notice something odd about the crew's attitude. While the officers treat you like potentially infectious cargo, the working class crew, the firemen, greasers, and trimmers who keep the ship running, show occasional sympathy. One grimy stoker, emerging from his shift in the boiler rooms, warns a group of children away from a dangerous area near the cargo holds. "Wouldn't want you little ones getting hurt," he says, his Liverpool accent thick as tar. "He'll die in 4 days, trapped behind a watertight door that seals him in with the flooding boilers." The ship's medical facilities for third class amount to one harried doctor who holds surgery hours from 10 to 11 a.m. The line already stretches down the corridor. Seasick passengers, children with scraped knees, pregnant women worried about the crossing. You overhear him telling his assistant that they're almost out of seasickness remedies, and it's only day 2. "Let them suffer," the assistant suggests, "builds character." The doctor, to his credit, looks appalled. As darkness falls, you learn about the third-class curfew. By 10 p.m., you're expected to be in your quarters. The lights in common areas shut off, the decks are closed, and stewards patrol the corridors like prison guards. The message is clear. Nighttime is for first-class passengers to enjoy the stars and champagne. You're here to sleep, wake up, and stay out of sight. From your porthole, bolted shut against both weather and escape, you can see the reflection of lights from the upper decks dancing on the dark water. Up there, the band plays ragtime until midnight. Down here, someone's baby cries while the engines thrum their ceaseless rhythm, counting down the hours you don't know are numbered. Being a woman in third class is like playing life on hard mode, with additional handicaps thrown in for fun. You've noticed the looks from certain crew members, the ones who size up unaccompanied females like predators evaluating prey. The ship's protection for ladies extends only to those who can afford first-class tickets. Down here in steerage, you're fair game for whatever harassment the crew decides won't get them fired, which, as it turns out, is quite a lot. The sleeping arrangements make everything worse. Unlike first and second class, where propriety demands strict segregation, third class throws families and strangers together based on available space. You might be bunking with 3 unknown men who've graciously agreed not to murder you in your sleep. The White Star Line's solution to potential impropriety? Absolutely nothing. They figure poor people don't have morals to protect anyway. You've already learned to move in groups. The Norwegian girl from G66 was cornered by a greaser yesterday near the engine room stairs, saved only because a group of Italian women heard her screams and descended like avenging angels, wooden spoons raised as weapons. The crew member slinked away, muttering about hysterical females. But you all know he'll try again. The ship's officers won't intervene. They're too busy ensuring first-class ladies aren't exposed to the sight of a working class person existing. The bathroom situation presents special challenges. Those two bathtubs for 700 people? Women get priority access from 6 to 8 a.m., which sounds generous until you realize that's 120 minutes for roughly 200 women. The math teacher in you calculates 36 seconds per person if everyone cooperates perfectly. Spoiler, they don't. Most women resort to sponge baths in their cabins, hanging blankets for privacy while their bunkmates politely pretend to be fascinated by the ceiling. You've noticed several women have adopted an ingenious survival strategy. They're dressing as men, not full disguises, that would be illegal, but practical trousers, loose shirts, cropped hair hidden under caps. They move more freely, get harassed less, and can navigate the ship without constant escorts. One Polish woman confides that she's been Pavel since boarding. Pavel gets to use the forward deck without being propositioned, can eat without men assuming she's available for conversation, and, most importantly, won't be automatically shoved into a lifeboat when the time comes, leaving her husband behind. The married women face different challenges. They're trying to maintain some semblance of family life in spaces designed to warehouse human cargo. You watch one mother attempting to create privacy for breastfeeding by rigging up a blanket tent in the general room, only to be told by a steward that decorations aren't allowed. She ends up feeding her infant in the toilet cubicle, sitting on the closed lid while other women wait outside, forming an impromptu honor guard against intrusion. Some women have found power in collective action. The Irish women have established what amounts to a protective society, watching each other's children, sharing food, and maintaining a whisper network about which crew members to avoid. They've even developed a code. Hanging a red petticoat outside a cabin door means someone inside needs help. It's already been used twice, both times successfully routing problematic crew members who suddenly remembered urgent duties elsewhere when faced with 20 angry women. The single women seeking marriage in America face unique perils. Several shipping companies are known to work with employment agencies that are actually fronts for brothels, promising domestic service jobs that turn into something entirely different. You overhear two Syrian girls, maybe 16, excitedly discussing their guaranteed positions at a gentleman's hotel in Chicago. An older woman tries to warn them in broken English, but they wave her off. They have official papers. After all, what could go wrong? Historians still argue about the pregnancy situation aboard Titanic. Official records show no births during the voyage, but survivor testimony mentions at least 3 women in advanced pregnancy. Where did they go? Some speculate they were hidden in the hospital to avoid immigration complications. Pregnant women were often refused entry to America. Others suggest darker possibilities about what happened to women who went into labor as the ship sank. The laundry situation creates its own special hell. First class has a full laundry service. You have a bucket and hope. Women have colonized every available water source, turning fire buckets into wash basins and using the heated pipes near the engine rooms as drying racks. One enterprising group has established a laundry cooperative, pooling resources to bribe a kitchen worker for access to hot water. They charge 2 cigarettes per garment, capitalism flourishing even here in the bowels of the ship. As night falls, the women's section becomes a fortress. Chairs are wedged under door handles, and informal guard shifts are established. You're paired with Bridget, an Irish factory worker who keeps a sock filled with coins under her pillow. For emergencies, she says, patting it meaningfully. From somewhere above, you hear the faint strains of the first-class orchestra playing Puccini. Down here, someone's humming a lullaby in Arabic while another woman softly cries, already homesick for a country she'll never see again. The engines throb beneath you, counting down to a disaster that will affect women very differently depending on which deck they can afford to sleep on. The children have taken over the ship like a benevolent plague. They're everywhere, racing through corridors, sliding down the polished handrails, turning every available space into their personal playground. The White Star Line, in its infinite wisdom, made no provisions for entertaining the 100+ children in steerage. No nursery, no playroom, not even a designated area where parents can contain their energetic offspring. So the kids have done what kids do. They've made the entire ship their domain. You watch a pack of them streak past, led by a Lebanese boy who's figured out that the crew change shifts at specific times, leaving certain areas temporarily unguarded. They've mapped the ship better than some officers, knowing which passages lead to interesting places and which doors are usually unlocked. One 8-year-old Finnish girl has become legendary for her ability to sneak into second class and return with pilfered sugar cubes, distributing them like a tiny, benevolent crime boss. The third-class general room transforms into a makeshift school each morning. Mrs. Sage, a former teacher traveling with her 9 children, yes, 9, has appointed herself educator-in-chief. She conducts lessons using chalk on the floor since there's no blackboard. Teaching English phrases that might help at Ellis Island. I am not sick. I have work waiting. No, officer, I am definitely not an anarchist. The children repeat these phrases with the solemnity of prayer, understanding instinctively that these words might determine their futures. But here's what's darkly fascinating. These children are accidentally preparing for disaster. Their games of hide and seek teach them every hidden corner of the ship. They know which crew members are kind, the baker who hands out broken cookies, and which are cruel, the master-at-arms who confiscated little Tommy's wooden horse for being disruptive. They've discovered that the mailroom on G-Deck has wonderful hiding spots among the sacks, not knowing they're playing in what will become a death trap. The children's sleeping arrangements are chaotic poetry. Families with multiple children stack them like cordwood, 3 to a bunk, head to toe, the smallest wedged between parents. Some have created hammock-like arrangements using spare blankets, turning their cabins into vertical cities. One Russian family has somehow fit 7 people into a 4-berth cabin using a complex system of scheduled sleeping that would make a submarine crew jealous. You notice the older children, those hovering between childhood and adulthood, have developed their own survival strategies. The boys, some as young as 12, already work unofficial jobs aboard ship. They run messages for passengers who'll pay a penny, help in the kitchens for leftover food, and know exactly which cargo holds contain interesting things. They're practicing for lives of labor that will begin the moment they reach New York, if they reach New York. The girls face different expectations. At 13 or 14, they're already considered marriage material in some cultures aboard. You watch mothers teaching daughters to sew by the porthole's dim light, passing down skills that might earn them positions as seamstresses. Others are learning English from battered primers, their mothers hoping education might save them from factory work. One Armenian girl practices writing her name in English over and over. Anna Tanos, Anna Tanos, Anna Tanos. She'll need to write it correctly at Ellis Island, or risk being renamed by an impatient official. Mealtime with children is controlled chaos. The dining room becomes a cacophony of spilled porridge, grabbed bread, and mothers trying to maintain civilization while their offspring attempt to explore under every table. The crew hates children's meals. One steward complains loudly that the little beggars waste more food than they eat. But you notice the same steward sneaking extra milk to a sickly infant, humanity breaking through his professional irritation. The children have their own telegraph system for sharing information. When the baker starts making fresh rolls, word spreads through their network faster than wireless. They know which lifeboats are being painted and leave small handprints in the fresh paint as calling cards, which officers carry peppermints, and exactly when the dog walking schedule brings the first class pets to the boat deck. Several enterprising children have started a business drawing portraits of these pampered pooches for their wealthy owners, earning more in tips than their parents make in a week. Disease spreads quickly among the children. You've already seen 2 cases of measles. Though the parents desperately try to hide it, a sick child at Ellis Island means the whole family gets sent back. The ship's doctor, overwhelmed by sheer numbers, has taught mothers basic quarantine procedures using sailcloth and carbolic acid. It's futile, really. In these cramped quarters, if one child gets sick, they all will. The peculiar democracy of children transcends the class boundaries adults maintain. During the brief periods when third-class children can access the boat deck, they sometimes encounter their first-class counterparts. Languages don't matter when you're comparing spinning tops or racing paper boats in puddles. You watch a French baron's son teaching knots to a Polish peasant boy, both equally delighted by the simple magic of rote becoming art. But here's what historians still debate: the exact number of children in third class. Passenger manifests are inconsistent about ages, and many children under 2 weren't issued separate tickets. Some estimate 100 children, others say closer to 130. This isn't academic nitpicking. It matters because the survival rates for third-class children were abysmal. Of all those pacing through these corridors, playing their innocent games, learning the ship's secrets, fewer than half will see another sunrise after April 14th. As evening falls, mothers begin the herding process, collecting their scattered offspring like wayward sheep. Bedtime stories echo in multiple languages, tales of golden streets in America, of relatives waiting with jobs and homes, of futures bright with possibility. One Italian grandmother tells the same story every night about a magic ship that carries good children to paradise. The children giggle at her fancy, not knowing she's describing a journey most of them won't complete. The engines lull them to sleep, their dreams full of adventures in a new world they're sailing toward at 22 knots, unaware they're actually racing toward an appointment with ice. You've been assigned to work in the ship's laundry, not because you applied, but because third class passengers who look strong enough are encouraged to earn their passage through labor. The encouragement comes in the form of a junior officer mentioning that working passengers get access to crew areas, better food, and most importantly, knowledge of the ship's layout that paying passengers never acquire. You take the hint. Smart move. As it turns out, the laundry occupies a steaming hell on F deck, where industrial washing machines churn constantly and the temperature hovers around 90 degrees. You're paired with Olga, a Ukrainian woman who communicates primarily through gestures and an impressive vocabulary of profanity that apparently transcends language barriers. Together, you process the endless stream of tablecloths, napkins, and sheets from the upper decks, each piece a reminder of luxury happening just a few floors above your head. But here's what makes this job valuable. Laundry workers go everywhere. You push wheeled carts through passages most third-class passengers never see, learning the ship's hidden geography. That unmarked door on D-deck, it leads directly to the second-class promenade. The service elevator near the Turkish baths, it runs all the way down to G-deck without any gates or locked doors. You're unconsciously mapping escape routes, though you don't know it yet. The crew areas reveal the ship's true hierarchy. Below the waterline, it's not about passenger class, it's about who keeps the ship running. The Black Gang, the firemen and trimmers who feed the boilers, rule these depths. They're covered in coal dust, streaming with sweat, and they treat the laundry workers with rough camaraderie. You're all wage slaves together. After all, one Liverpudlian fireman, built like a brick wall and twice as solid, shows you a shortcut through the engine rooms that cuts 10 minutes off your route. Just don't let the officers catch you, he warns. They don't like the passengers seeing how the sausage is made. You quickly learn that information is the real currency down here. The crew gossips constantly, and laundry workers are invisible enough to overhear everything. You learn that the ship's doctor is drunk more often than sober, that the chief baker is feuding with the head chef over storage space, and that several lifeboats failed their last inspection but were passed anyway. White Star don't want delays, a greaser confides. Bad for business. The physical layout of the working areas defies logic until you realize it was designed by people who'd never have to navigate it. Corridors dead end randomly, stairs appear and disappear, and some passages are so narrow you have to turn sideways with your laundry cart. It's like the Winchester Mystery House went to sea. But after a few days, you develop an internal compass. You know that the vibration under your feet means you're near the engine room, that the smell of bread indicates proximity to the bakery, and that the sudden temperature drop means you're approaching the refrigerated cargo holds. Your fellow workers represent every corner of Europe and beyond. There's Luigi, an Italian who claims he was a chef at the Savoy. Nobody believes him. but his descriptions of soufflés are convincing. There's Chen, whose official job is general assistant, but who actually seems to be running an informal banking system for the Chinese passengers. And there's Margaret, an Irish girl who's definitely lying about her age. She can't be more than 14, but who works with the desperate efficiency of someone supporting younger siblings. The laundry schedule reveals the ship's hidden rhythms. First class generates mountains of washing after every meal. Apparently, rich people change tablecloths like they're contaminated after single use. The Turkish baths produce specialty items that require careful handling, towels that cost more than you make in a month, robes that feel like wearing a cloud. You're instructed to count every item obsessively. A missing napkin gets docked from your pay. A damaged tablecloth could cost you the entire voyage's wages. But the job has unexpected perks. Laundry workers eat in the crew mess, where the food, while not first class, beats third class offerings. You get real butter, occasional fresh vegetables, and coffee that actually tastes like coffee. More importantly, you eat with crew members who know things. Over meals, you learn that the ship's taking a more northern route than usual to make better time. Captain wants to impress New York with an early arrival. A quartermaster mentions, full speed, no matter what. Historians still debate whether working passengers like you had better or worse survival chances. On one hand, you knew the ship's layout intimately. You had relationships with crew members who might help during evacuation. You had access to areas that could provide alternative escape routes. On the other hand, when disaster struck, many working passengers were at their posts in the deepest parts of the ship. The laundry workers on duty that night were found days later, apparently having tried to finish their shift even as water rose around them. The most valuable knowledge you gain comes from an unexpected source: the rats. Every ship has them, but laundry workers know where they nest. 3 days into the voyage, you notice the rats moving upward, abandoning their usual haunts in the lower holds. Olga notices too. She crosses herself and mutters something that sounds like a prayer. You laugh it off. Surely rats can't predict the future. But old sailing superstitions exist for reasons, and the rats of the Titanic are already preparing for something your human senses can't yet detect. As you finish your shift, muscles aching from hauling wet linens, you realize you know this ship better than some officers. You know which doors stick, which passages flood during rough weather, which stairs lead up fastest. You've become part of the hidden machinery that keeps the Titanic running, invisible but essential. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again: wash, carry, learn, survive. The engines throb their familiar rhythm as you head back to G-Deck, counting your extra wages and not knowing you've actually been earning something far more valuable: a mental map that might save your life. The temperature drops on April 13th, like nature flipped a switch. You wake to find frost on the inside of your porthole, the one that's supposed to be sealed against the elements. Your breath clouds in the cabin air, and your thin blanket might as well be tissue paper. The Norwegian in the bunk above jokes that it feels like home, but even he's put on every piece of clothing he owns. In the crew mess during your laundry shift, the talk is all about ice. Seen bergs as big as houses, mutters a lookout coming off watch, warming his hands on a coffee mug. Captain's got the warnings, but we're not slowing down. Another crew member mentions they've had 3 ice warnings from other ships since noon. The wireless operators are apparently swamped with messages about ice fields ahead. You fold towels and listen, filing away information that seems abstractly interesting. The experienced sailors are acting strange. You've been around enough to recognize the signs of unease in men who've spent their lives at sea. They're checking equipment that doesn't need checking, tightening bolts that are already secure. One of the able seamen spends his entire break sharpening a knife that could already split atoms. When you ask what's wrong, he just says, "Don't like the feel of her tonight." Ships, you're learning, have moods, up in first class, which you glimpse while delivering fresh linens. The cold is a novelty. Passengers bundle up in furs and take bracing walks on the promenade, laughing about the refreshing temperature. Down in steerage, it's not refreshing, it's brutal. Families huddle together for warmth, and several children have developed worrying coughs. The ship's heating system, designed with typical class consciousness, prioritizes upper decks. Heat rises, after all, so why waste coal warming the bottom of the ship? You notice odd crew behaviors that will make sense only in hindsight. Officers are conducting lifeboat drills, but only among themselves, quietly, without alarming passengers. You watch them checking equipment, testing davits, counting life belts. One junior officer meticulously inspects the boats on your section, making notes in a small book. When he sees you watching, he quickly shoves the notebook in his pocket and hurries away. The kitchen staff mention that the ice warnings have affected menu planning. They're worried about the fresh water pipes freezing, says a cook you've befriended with cigarette bribes. Told us to prepare extra soups, keep things warm. He's been instructed to have hot coffee and cocoa ready throughout the night, unusual for a voyage where midnight service typically means champagne for first class only. In the wireless room, which you pass while hauling laundry to the officers' quarters, you can hear the constant chatter of the Marconi apparatus. The operators look haggard, dealing with a flood of personal messages from first-class passengers while trying to handle official traffic. One of them, Phillips, snaps at a colleague about these bloody ice warnings interrupting paying messages. The irony won't be lost on historians, who still debate whether commercial pressure contributed to ignoring safety warnings. Your Ukrainian colleague, Olga, has become increasingly superstitious. She points out that the seabirds following the ship have disappeared, never a good sign. She's noticed that the ship's cat, usually a fixture in the galley, has taken to hiding in the warmest corners it can find. Animals know, she insists. They always know. You want to dismiss this as old world nonsense, but the rat's upward migration keeps nagging at your mind. The crew's mood infects the passengers. In steerage, conversations turn to other ships that have foundered. Someone mentions the Republic, which sank 3 years ago after a collision. Another brings up the Neuronic, which simply vanished. These stories, usually told with bravado, now carry an edge of genuine fear. Mothers hold their children a little tighter during evening prayers. But here's what's truly unsettling: the silence from the bridge. Normally, officers make regular rounds, checking on all passenger areas. Today, they're conspicuously absent from third class. It's as if the ship's command has turned inward, focused on something more pressing than maintaining class discipline. You deliver pressed uniforms to the officers' quarters and overhear fragments of heated discussion about maintaining speed and company expectations. The dinner conversation in the crew mess is revealing. A quartermaster mentions that the ship's course has been adjusted slightly south, a minor comfort, as this should take you away from the worst ice. But he also mentions that the captain has ordered extra lookouts posted, though he's not reducing speed. A Smith's got a schedule to keep, he says, referring to the captain. 40 years at sea without a scratch. He's not starting now. As your shift ends, you step outside briefly onto the well deck. The stars are brilliant in the frigid air, clearer than you've ever seen them. The ocean is dead calm, so still it looks like black glass. Beautiful, but wrong somehow. Sailors call this an oily sea, and they don't trust it. Without waves, ice is harder to spot. The bergs don't break water visibly. They just loom out of darkness like white ghosts. You return to your cabin to find your bunkmates engaged in a heated debate about whether to sleep fully dressed. The cold makes it practical, but there's an unspoken admission in the act, an acknowledgement that something might happen that requires quick movement. You compromise by keeping your shoes on, laced loosely, just in case. The engines throb their familiar rhythm, but tonight it sounds like a countdown. Outside your sealed porthole, the temperature continues to drop, and somewhere ahead in the darkness, ice waits with the patience of geology. The grinding, tearing sound reaches you even in the bowels of the ship. It's 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, and you're in your bunk, not quite asleep, because the cold makes real rest impossible. The sound is wrong, not the crash everyone imagines, but a long, grinding scrape, like God running a fingernail along the hull. The engines stop. In 4 days, you've grown so accustomed to their rhythm that the silence feels like death. Your cabin lurches slightly, and loose items slide to starboard. The Italian laborer in the bunk below mutters a prayer. You're all awake now, looking at each other in the dim light, everyone thinking the same thing, but nobody wanting to say it first. Then the engines restart, a relief so profound you almost laugh. Just ice, probably. Ships brush ice all the time in the North Atlantic. Nothing to worry about. But you know this ship now, know its moods and rhythms, and something's different. The engine sound is wrong, labored, struggling. You swing out of your bunk, and your feet hit water. Not much, just a thin film on the floor, but water nonetheless. The Norwegian shouts something that needs no translation. Water on G deck means the ship is wounded below the waterline. In the corridor, chaos is already building. Passengers in various states of undress mill about, asking questions in a dozen languages. Nobody has answers. The emergency bells haven't rung. No crew members have appeared with instructions. You're on your own, 700 people, trying to understand what's happening with no information and no leadership. Some passengers return to their cabins, convinced it's nothing. Others, the ones who've been at sea before, are already heading for the stairs. You remember your laundry routes and head for a crew passage that bypasses the main stairs. It's already filling with other passengers who figured out the same trick. An engineer rushes past, soaking wet and wild-eyed. "Get up top," he shouts. "Get up top now." Sam. He doesn't stop to explain, racing upward like the devil's casing him. That's when you know, with cold certainty, the Titanic is sinking. The stairs are a battlefield. Hundreds of people trying to climb narrow passages designed for routine use, not mass evacuation. Children scream, women pray, men shout instructions that nobody follows. You're pressed against the wall, using your knowledge of the ship to find alternative routes when the main ways clog. Through a crew door, up a service ladder, anywhere but the main passages where human traffic has created lethal bottlenecks. You reach E-deck and find the gates locked. Of course they are. Those gates that were supposed to protect America from diseased immigrants are now protecting first class from the sight of panicking poor people. A crowd has gathered, rattling the bars, shouting for help that isn't coming. Men take turns kicking at the locks, while women hold crying children. Someone produces a metal bar and starts prying at the hinges. An officer finally appears, not to open the gate, but to order you all back down. "Return to your cabins," he says with stunning authority. "This is merely a precaution. The ship cannot sink." He actually seems to believe it. Several passengers, conditioned to obey authority, turn to leave. Then water starts flooding onto E-deck from below, and his facade cracks. He fumbles for keys with shaking hands. But here's where your work experience pays off. You know another way. Leading a group of passengers who trust you because you seem to know where you're going. You navigate through the crew quarters. The laundry route takes you through the bakery, where bread for tomorrow's breakfast sits in neat rows, never to be eaten. Through the mailroom, where sorting continues even as water creeps up the walls, postal workers literally dying at their posts rather than abandoning the mail. You emerge on D-deck near the second-class area. Here, the evacuation is more orderly, but no less frightening. Second-class passengers at least have life belts and crew members directing them. You grab life belts from a storage locker you remember from your rounds, distributing them to your group. They're the old cork type, bulky and uncomfortable, but they're better than nothing. The tilt of the deck is noticeable now, walking uphill toward the stern, downhill toward the bow. You pass the gymnasium, where the instructor is still at his post, calmly demonstrating the rowing machines to a few first-class men who are maintaining their British composure by pretending nothing unusual is happening. It's surreal, the band playing in the first-class lounge, the lights still blazing, the absolute refusal to acknowledge that the unsinkable is sinking. Historians debate exactly when different groups realized the ship was doomed. First class knew first. They were closer to the officers, the lifeboats, the information. Third class found out last, fighting through locked gates and climbing from the depths while precious minutes ticked away. You're somewhere in between, using your fragmentary knowledge to make life or death decisions with almost no information. You reach the boat deck and see why the crew wasn't in a hurry to wake third class. The lifeboats are launching half empty, filled with first class women who refuse to leave without their husbands, while hundreds of steerage passengers aren't even on deck yet. An officer is shouting, "Women and children only," but he means first class women and children. When a group of immigrant women rush forward, crew members form a human chain to block them. "Wait your turn," they say, as if there will be enough turns for everyone. The ship's list is pronounced now, maybe 10 degrees. Walking requires holding on to railings. In the distance, you can see lights of another ship, maddeningly close but motionless. People are firing distress rockets that burst like deadly fireworks against the stars. The band has moved outside, still playing with bizarre dedication. You recognize autumn as water creeps up the deck behind them. The night is clear, cold, and running out of time, and you're calculating odds with the brutal arithmetic of disaster. 2,200 people, boats for 1,178, and most of those boats launching with empty seats while you stand on a tilting deck, watching wealth buy survival. Information is more precious than diamonds right now, and you have almost none. The officers are lying, the crew is panicking, and every announcement contradicts the last one. Return to your cabins becomes all passengers on deck, becomes women and children to the boats, becomes chaos. You're trying to save your life based on rumors, half-truths, and the obvious fact that the bow is disappearing into the Atlantic. The language barrier turns deadly. A crew member shouts instructions in English, and maybe a third of the crowd understands. Those who speak English try to translate, but panic makes everyone stupid. Schwimmwesten becomes schwimmen, and suddenly Germans think they're being told to swim for it. A group of Lebanese women clutch their children, waiting for instructions in Arabic that will never come. You watch an Italian family follow the wrong crowd back down into the ship because nobody explained that boat deck means salvation. You attach yourself to a Swedish woman who seems to know things. She's been questioning every crew member in sight, piecing together information like a detective. From her, you learn that the mail hold is flooded, the squash court is underwater, and the bow is going down fast. She's heard that boiler room 6 is gone, maybe boiler room 5 too. The engineers are still down there, keeping the lights on so others can escape. Heroes dying in the dark so you can see to panic properly. The ship's class system persists even in disaster. First-class passengers get personal escorts to boats, their life belts properly tied by attentive stewards. You've got a cork contraption that you're not even sure you're wearing correctly. A first-class woman complains that the life belt clashes with her dress. You want to scream that she'll clash even worse with the ocean floor, but you need your energy for survival. Rumors ripple through the crowd like waves. The Californian is coming to rescue everyone. No, it's the Olympic. Actually, it's the Frankfurt. Ships are racing here at full speed. Be calm. There's a boat for everyone. You recognize these as the lies people tell when reality is too terrible to acknowledge. That ship on the horizon hasn't moved in 30 minutes. If rescue was coming, it would be here. You find a crew member you recognize from the laundry, a young Welshman who always tipped his cap to the workers. He's gone gray with fear, but he tells you the truth. We're going down by the head. Maybe an hour left, maybe less. Forget the boats. They're not taking our kind yet. Find something that floats. He presses a knife into your hand. For cutting ropes, he says, then disappears into the crowd. The class war plays out in miniature at every lifeboat. Officers check tickets like this is a theater show, not a sinking ship. Third-class women with babies are turned away, while first-class women's maids get seats. You watch a fur-coated woman refuse to enter a boat because her luggage isn't loaded yet. The officer actually considers this request, while immigrant children shiver in thin clothes 10 feet away. But information flows both ways in chaos. The rich might have access to boats, but the poor have networks. Word spreads through the steerage crowd. Boat 14 has a sympathetic officer. The collapsibles on the roof might be forgotten. The crew's quarters have spare life belts. You're part of a whisper network of the condemned, sharing fragments of hope. The band plays on, and you realize they're not heroes. They're employees who probably don't know where else to go. Their music provides a surreal soundtrack to bureaucratic murder. Women and children first sounds noble until you realize it means first-class women and children first, then second class if we're feeling generous, then maybe you if there's time, which there won't be. An Assyrian man near you is crying, not from fear but frustration. He's trying to explain that his wife is on the other side of the ship, blocked by a locked gate. His English consists of maybe 20 words, none adequate for this situation. You try to help, but the officer just waves you both away. No men in the boats, he says, missing the point entirely. The man runs off, presumably to find another way around. You'll never know if he succeeds. The tilt is severe now. Walking requires planning, handholds, momentum. You pass the Marconi room where Phillips is still transmitting, tapping out SOS and CQD to anyone listening. The water is probably at his ankles, but he keeps sending humanity's most desperate punctuation into the night. Later, you'll learn he transmitted until the power failed, then died, trying to reach a collapsible, another working-class hero whose name history barely remembers. You're making impossible calculations. Stay on ship until the last boats launch, risking getting trapped. Jump now while you're strong, risking freezing before help arrives. You don't even know if help is coming. The certainty of death fights the possibility of survival, and mathematics offers no comfort. The water is 28 degrees. You'll have maybe 20 minutes before hypothermia wins. The ship groans like a dying animal. Plates buckle, rivets pop like gunshots, and somewhere deep in her guts, the Titanic is tearing herself apart. The lights flicker, but hold, those engineers still dying at their posts. You think of them down there in the flooding darkness, knowing they're dead, but keeping the generators running so others might live. The lights will burn until the very end, a funeral pyre for the men who maintained them. Around you, third-class passengers make their own rules. Locked gates are broken, barriers ignored, the careful segregation of classes dissolving in the democracy of disaster. But it's too late. The boats are gone or going, and you're left with the terrible knowledge that information could have saved you. If someone had just told the truth an hour ago, the ship will sink. Get to the boats. How many more might have had a chance? Instead, you got lies, delays, and locked gates, and now you're standing on a tilting deck with nothing but ugly options, watching distress rockets bloom against stars that don't care about class distinctions or shipping company policies. The stairs have become waterfalls. You're fighting upward through a cascade of freezing seawater, along with dozens of others who've realized the lower decks are death traps. The elegant grand staircase you glimpsed while delivering laundry is now a vertical river. Third-class stairs are worse, narrow, steep, and clogged with desperate people. The water rises faster than you can climb. You remember the crew passages through the first-class galley, where copper pots float like boats, and a beautiful ice sculpture of a swan melts into nothing. The irony isn't lost on you, ice sinking a ship decorated with ice. Through the pantry where crystal glasses slide off shelves in musical destruction, every door you open might reveal salvation or more flooding. It's a deadly lottery with your life as the stake. A family ahead of you makes a fatal error, turning down a corridor that leads toward the bow. You shout a warning, but they don't understand or don't trust you. They disappear into the darkness, heading directly into the flooded sections. You'll think about them later, if there is a later, wondering if they realized their mistake before the water found them. The ship's geometry has gone insane. Floors tilt at impossible angles, walls become floors, ceilings become walls. You're not walking anymore. You're climbing, crawling, pulling yourself up through a funhouse designed by a sadistic god. A grand piano slides past like a musical avalanche, smashing through a wall in an explosion of splinters and discordant notes. You reach D-deck and find temporary relief. The water hasn't reached here yet, but yet is doing heavy lifting. The bow is completely submerged now, and you can feel the ship dying beneath your feet. She shudders, groans, makes sounds no ship should make. It's like standing on a dying whale that's slowly rolling over to show its belly to the stars. Here's where class warfare becomes vertical. The first-class passengers who delayed too long are now in the same situation as you, but they're soft. They've never had to fight for anything, and it shows. You watch a wealthy man in evening dress stand paralyzed at a tilted doorway, unable to process that his money can't buy him level ground. You shoulder past him, and he follows because even now, the rich expect the poor to lead them to safety. The lights flicker more frequently. When they go out briefly, the darkness is absolute, filled with screams and prayers in every language humanity has invented. Then they blaze back to life, those doomed engineers still at their posts. You use each lit interval to memorize the next section of your route, knowing that eventually the darkness will win. A young mother struggles with 3 children, trying to climb while carrying a baby. Without thinking, you grab one of her boys, hoisting him onto your shoulders. Others see and help with the other children. For a moment, the tribal boundaries dissolve. You're all just humans trying to reach air. The mother gasps something in Polish that sounds like gratitude. You'll never know if she makes it. The crew has abandoned any pretense of order. Some for the boats, some help passengers, some simply stand frozen by the magnitude of disaster. You pass an officer meticulously arranging deck chairs, his mind broken by the impossibility of his situation. Another sits on the floor, drinking from a flask and laughing at nothing. The chain of command has dissolved into every man for himself. Water explodes through a porthole ahead, a horizontal geyser that knocks people down like bowling pins. The ocean has found another way in, and it's hungry. You detour through the smoking room, where beautiful stained glass windows depict ships from history. Soon this ship will join them in the past tense. The floor is littered with abandoned life belts. People shed them to climb faster, not understanding they're throwing away their only chance if they reach water. You're in a race now, and the ocean is winning. Water climbs the stairs behind you, inexorable as death. You can hear it rushing through the decks below, claiming spaces where people might still be trapped. The postal clerks, the engine room crew, the bakers who were preparing tomorrow's bread, all gone now, drowned at their posts or fleeing through passages that no longer lead up. The ship lurches, and suddenly you're not climbing, but falling, sliding down a floor that's become a ramp. You slam into a wall that's now the floor, joining a pile of other passengers in a tangle of limbs and terror. The world has tilted beyond recovery. Getting up requires new thinking. What was forward is now up. What was up is now impossible. A child's shoe floats past. Just one, small and worn, and you wonder with sick certainty where its owner is. The water is shockingly cold when it reaches you, cold enough to steal your breath and make your muscles seize. But it also brings clarity, move or die. The animal part of your brain takes over, and you're climbing again, pulling yourself up on anything solid. You reach a functioning door to the boat deck and stumble into the open air. The scene that greets you defies comprehension. The bow is gone, simply gone. Water sweeping up the deck in a steady advance. The stern has risen clear of the water, propellers visible against the stars. People slide down the deck like ants on a dinner plate someone's tipping into the sink. And still the band plays, though half their number has fled. Nearer, my God, to thee never sounded so literal. The lifeboats are gone, everyone launched or washed away. The roof where collapsibles were stored is already underwater. You've climbed all this way to discover that the real barrier was never the locked gates or the class system. It was time, and you've run out. The ship screams beneath you, metal, tearing like paper, and you realize with perfect clarity that making it to the deck means nothing if the deck itself is sinking. The water advances steady as an army, and you're out of stairs to climb. The boat deck is a battlefield where physics has already won. Officers still shout, "Women and children first," at boats that no longer exist, their voices cracking with hysteria. The angle is so steep now that people lose their footing and slide screaming toward the water. You wrap your arms around a railing, becoming just another obstacle for bodies tumbling past. A circle of crew members has formed around Collapsible A, trying to float it off the roof of the officers' quarters. First class, third class, nobody cares anymore. You're all equally doomed. but the human chains forming to block steerage passengers have been replaced by human chains trying to save anyone at all. You join the effort, knowing it's probably futile, but needing to do something other than wait to die. The collapsible finally slides free, just as water surges across the deck. People throw themselves at it, in it, on it, creating a floating scrum of desperation. An officer fires his pistol into the air, trying to restore order to chaos. "Women and children," he screams, but the boat is already washing away, overloaded and half swamped. You watch it disappear into the darkness, carrying its cargo of the lucky and the damned. The ship lists further, and you realize standing is no longer an option. You're climbing now, pulling yourself up the deck like it's a mountain face. Others have the same idea, creating a chain of humanity ascending toward the stern. A man in evening dress offers his hand to pull you up. You take it without irony. Death has made socialists of you all. But here's the terrible truth. There's nowhere to go. You can climb to the very stern, can be the last person on the highest point, and you'll still end up in the water. The officers know it. The crew knows it. Everyone knows it. Yet you climb anyway, because the alternative is accepting death, and the human body rebels against that acceptance until the very end. You reach the well deck where you first breathed free air 4 days ago. It's tilted at a 45-degree angle now, deck chairs sliding past like toboggans. A group of men are throwing anything that floats overboard: chairs, doors, wooden panels torn from walls. It's pathetic but practical. In 28-degree water, even a piece of debris might mean the difference between dying in 5 minutes or lasting long enough for rescue. The lights suddenly dim, flare brilliant, then go out forever. Those engineers have finally lost their battle or drowned at their posts. In the darkness, the screaming intensifies. Without light, people can't see to climb, can't avoid sliding bodies, can't do anything but hold on and pray. The stars provide enough light to see shapes, but not faces. Everyone becomes anonymous in the dark. A priest is giving last rites to a group of passengers, his voice calm in the pandemonium. Catholics, Protestants, Jews, everyone kneels together. Denominational differences irrelevant when you're minutes from meeting whatever God you believe in. You join them, not from faith, but from the human need for community in the face of extinction. The Latin words mean nothing to you, but the rhythm is soothing. The ship groans again, a sound that comes from everywhere and nowhere. You feel it through the deck, through your bones. The Titanic is breaking apart. Windows explode from pressure, spraying glass like deadly confetti. The deck splits, and you watch in horrified fascination as the bow section tears away and plummets toward the ocean floor. The stern section, suddenly free, crashes back level. For a moment, you dare to hope. Maybe it will float. It doesn't. Water pours into the torn middle section, and the stern begins its own final plunge. But the momentary leveling has given you a chance. You're no longer climbing, but running, sprinting toward the very back of the ship, where the propellers rise like bronze monuments to human arrogance. Others have the same idea. You're part of a river of humanity flowing upward, away from the water for a few more precious seconds. A woman near you has given up. She sits on a bench, arranging her skirts with methodical precision, determined to die with dignity. Her calm is more terrifying than the screaming. Children cling to parents who have no comfort to offer. A group of men lock arms and begin singing, not hymns, but drinking songs, defiant to the end. You want to join them, want their courage, but your body won't stop fighting for life. The stern rises higher, higher, impossibly high. You're nearly vertical now, hanging onto the railing like it's a ladder. Below, people who've lost their grip tumble past, bouncing off obstacles in a human avalanche. The sound is worse than the screaming, the solid thud of bodies hitting metal. You close your eyes, but can't close your ears. The ship pauses, balanced on its end like a massive gravestone. In this moment of impossible equilibrium, there's almost silence. Even the screaming stops as everyone holds their breath, waiting. The stars wheel overhead, indifferent to the drama below. Then the Titanic gives a final shudder, and you know with absolute certainty that you're going into the water. The only question is whether you jump or let the ship take you down. You think of the knife the Welsh boy gave you. For cutting ropes, he said. But maybe he meant for cutting yourself free from the suction when 46,000 tons of steel plummets to the ocean floor. You grip it in one hand, the railing in the other, and wait for physics to make your choice for you. Around you, others prepare in their own ways, prayers, curses, or simple screams of defiance at the universe that's about to kill them. The deck tilts past vertical, and gravity finally wins its patient argument with hope. The ship is dying beneath you, and conventional escape routes no longer exist. You're part of a desperate scramble to find anything that might float. Men are ripping doors off hinges, throwing deck chairs overboard, even prying up wooden decking with their bare hands. It's futile but necessary, the last acts of people who refuse to go quietly into that black water. You spot a group of kitchen workers rolling barrels from the pantry. "They're empty," one shouts. "They'll float." It's brilliant and desperate. Wooden barrels that held flour or pickles transformed into potential life rafts. You help them, muscles screaming as you manhandle the barrels toward the rail. Others see and join in, creating an improvised assembly line of the doomed. A baker you recognize from your laundry rounds, Charles Jokin, appears with an entire rack of bread loaves. He's magnificently drunk, tossing bread into the water with methodical precision. "For the swimmers," he slurs. "They'll need something to eat while they wait." It's insane, but no more insane than anything else happening. Later, you'll learn he survived by riding the stern down like an elevator, too drunk to feel the cold that killed sober men in minutes. The deck chairs are already gone, so people tear apart anything wooden. A man attacks a beautiful carved panel with an axe, reducing art to potential flotation. Others form bucket brigades, not to fight flooding, but to throw loose objects overboard where they might be retrieved later. It's organized chaos, humanity's last stand against physics. You help a group trying to free a wooden grating from the deck. It's bolted down, but desperation provides superhuman strength. The bolts finally give way with a shriek of metal, and you haul the grating to the rail. It's pathetic, maybe 4 feet square, able to support perhaps 2 people. 20 hands reach for it. You back away, unwilling to fight the dying for such meager hope. The collapsible boats stored on the roof are your last real chance. But reaching them requires acrobatics. The angle is so steep now that it's like climbing a building. You join a human ladder, people standing on shoulders, reaching for boats that might already be floating free. Someone's boot splits your lip, but you taste blood and keep climbing. Pain is for people with futures. Collapsible B is tangled in ropes and rigging. You remember the knife and start cutting, others joining with whatever sharp objects they have. The boat finally breaks free just as the sea reaches you, not washing over the deck, but rising up to meet it. The collapsible flips upside down in the chaos, but it floats. Men throw themselves onto its overturned hull, creating a pyramid of desperate humanity. You're not close enough to reach it. Instead, you focus on smaller debris. A wooden door floats past, a beautiful thing with carved panels that once graced a first-class cabin. You grab it, but so do 3 other people. There's a brief, shameful struggle before you realize cooperation is the only way any of you survive. You work together to maneuver the door clear of the sinking ship, preparing to ride it into the water. The creativity of desperation amazes you. Men tie life belts to anything buoyant: chairs, tables, wooden boxes. One group has lashed several doors together into a makeshift raft. It won't last long in the Atlantic swells, but it might last long enough. An engineer appears with a coil of rope, shouting instructions about tying yourself to larger debris to avoid separation. It's the kind of practical advice that might actually save lives. But for every success, there are a dozen failures. A heavy wooden bench, thrown overboard with hope, simply sinks. Life belts torn from storage prove to be rotted, falling apart at the first stress. A beautiful leather settee, which someone dragged from the smoking room, absorbs water and disappears instantly. Not everything that should float does, and physics doesn't care about your desperation. The musicians have finally stopped playing. You see them briefly, throwing their instruments overboard, cellos and violins that might float long enough to save someone. Even art becomes survival equipment in the end. One musician carefully removes his life belt and ties it to his violin case before throwing both overboard. Someone might need it, he says to no one in particular. The ship's final plunge accelerates, and your door raft is your only option. You and your impromptu partners push off from the ship, kicking desperately to get clear before the suction pulls you under. Around you, hundreds of others enter the water on their own improvised rafts, some successful, most not. A man floats past on what appears to be a dining table, complete with tablecloth. He's arranged himself formally, as if waiting to be served. The creativity extends to the water itself. Those without debris improvise. Groups lock arms in circles, trying to share body heat and buoyancy. Others strip off heavy clothing that would drag them down. Modesty abandoned for survival. You see a woman remove her corset, that torture device of fashion, and use its steel stays to hook onto a floating crate. Necessity mothers the strangest inventions. Your door supports you, and one other man, more would sink it. Others cling to the edges, and you don't have the heart or strength to fight them off. You're all in this together now, a confederation of the dying, hoping your improvised raft lasts longer than your body heat. The water is so cold it feels hot at first, then numb, then nothing at all. You grip the door with hands you can no longer feel, wondering if this desperate creativity has bought you minutes or merely the illusion of hope. Around you, the Atlantic is littered with the debris of human ingenuity: doors, chairs, barrels, and bodies, all floating together in democracy's coldest expression. Some will support life for precious minutes, others are already failing, and you can't tell which category your door falls into. You kick feebly to stay atop it, already feeling the lethargy that precedes freezing, and wonder if anyone will ever know how hard you fought, how creative you were, how much you wanted to live. The water hits like a sledgehammer made of ice. Every nerve in your body screams at once, then goes silent. The cold is beyond description. It doesn't feel like temperature anymore, but like violence, like being beaten by the ocean itself. Your first instinct is to gasp, but you fight it. Gasping means drowning. Instead, you blow out hard, expelling air before the cold can lock your lungs. Around you, hundreds are making the fatal mistake. They hit the water and inhale sharply, an involuntary reflex to shocking cold. Salt water floods their lungs, and they're drowning before they even have a chance to freeze. You watch a man near you thrash for 10 seconds before going still, killed not by cold, but by his own reflexes. The human body, it turns out, is designed to kill you in 28-degree water. You've kept your shoes, remembering advice from that Welsh crewman who seemed to know things. Others kicked theirs off to swim better, but he was right. In water this cold, swimming is irrelevant. You're not going to stroke your way to safety. You're going to float and hope, and shoes help you float. Every ounce of buoyancy matters when death is measured in minutes. The life belt is wrong. You realize this almost immediately. It's designed to keep an unconscious person's head above water, but it forces you into a position that maximizes heat loss. Your back arches, exposing your chest and stomach to the cold, but taking it off means sinking, so you endure, trying to curl into a ball while the cork fights to straighten you out. The screaming starts to fade after 5 minutes, not because people have found peace, but because the cold has stolen their voices. Vocal cords don't work when your core temperature drops. The Atlantic becomes quieter, filled with splashing and gasping rather than human voices. It's worse somehow, the sound of 1,500 people dying quietly, their bodies shutting down system by system. You're part of a cluster of survivors around an overturned collapsible. Maybe 30 people cling to its sides or balance on its hull. A ship's officer stands in the middle, trying to distribute weight. "Don't rush it," he shouts. "You'll flip us all." He's right, but people dying of cold don't care about physics. They push forward, desperate to get any part of their body out of the water. The water itself is your enemy in ways you didn't expect. It's not still, even on this calm night. Swells roll through, lifting and dropping you. Each wave washes over your head, forcing salt water into your mouth and nose. You learn to time your breathing, to anticipate the rhythm, but your reactions are slowing. What takes a second now will take 2 seconds, in 5 minutes, then 4 seconds, then forever. Your door raft is a mixed blessing. It keeps your upper body mostly out of the water, but your legs dangle, cooling faster than the rest of you. You try to pull them up, but coordination is already failing. Your fingers do not grip properly. You know you should be panicking about this, but the cold has stolen your fear too. Everything is becoming distant, theoretical, happening to someone else. The stars above are brilliant, mocking in their beauty. You can see the Milky Way with perfect clarity, the last thing you might ever see. Around you, people make their own peace with ending. Some pray, their words slurred by cold and water. Others sing or try to, national anthems, hymns, lullabies their mothers sang. A group of Swedes lock arms and chant something that sounds ancient, primal, a Viking farewell to the world. But here's what the movies never show. Hypothermia isn't peaceful. Your body fights every second. Muscles cramp and spasm. Your heart hammers, then slows, then races again. You're drowning in your own skin as blood retreats from extremities. The shivering is so violent, it feels like seizures. This isn't going gentle into any good night. It's being beaten to death by physics. The worst part is watching others die. A man next to you simply stops moving, his grip loosening on the debris. He slides into the water face first, and nobody has the strength to turn him over. Children go faster, less body mass, quicker cooling. You watch a mother trying to hold her baby above water, but her arms have stopped working. The baby disappears, and she follows, too cold to even cry about it. Time becomes elastic. Has it been 5 minutes or 50? Your waterlogged pocket watch stopped at 2:22, but that means nothing now. The cold has destroyed your ability to judge duration. You exist in an eternal now of freezing, each moment identical to the last. The only clock that matters is your body temperature, and it's counting down to zero. And you're hallucinating now, a sure sign the end is near. The water looks warm, inviting. You see your mother making soup in the kitchen back home. Smell bread baking. Feel sunshine that can't possibly exist. Your brain is dying, firing random neurons in a last desperate attempt to make sense of senselessness. Part of you knows these are lies, but that part is fading too. People around you have stopped fighting. They float vertically, heads tilted back, eyes reflecting stars they no longer see. The life belts keep them upright, creating an ocean of corpses standing at attention. You want to close their eyes, but your hands are clubs now, useless meat attached to dying arms. You can't even close your own eyes properly. The lids are too cold to work. But you're still here, still thinking, however slowly. The knife in your pocket weighs 1,000 pounds, but it reminds you that you chose to fight. As water closes over your head again, and you struggle to surface with muscles that barely respond, you realize the cruelest truth. Entering the water was never the hard part. The hard part is staying alive long enough for it to matter. Your door raft bobs in a sea of the dying and dead, and you hold on with hands you can no longer feel, buying seconds in a market where minutes are already too expensive. 20 minutes in the water, and you're not dead yet. This is both miracle and curse. Most around you have already succumbed, their bodies floating in those grotesque lifebelt poses. You're alive enough to know you're dying, conscious enough to catalog your body's systematic shutdown. Your fingers welded themselves to the door 10 minutes ago. You couldn't let go if you wanted to. The sounds are wrong now. No more screaming, no splashing, just the gentle lap of water against debris and bodies. Occasionally, someone moans or calls a name, but mostly it's quiet. 1,500 people entered this water, and maybe 200 are still making noise. The mathematics of cold: subtract 50 humans every 5 minutes until none remain. You've stopped shivering. This should terrify you. It means your core temperature has dropped below the point where your body bothers fighting. But terror requires energy you don't have. You observe your own dying with detached curiosity. You think with stupid clarity, so this is how it ends. Not with drama, but with biology. The lifeboats are out there. You can see their lanterns bobbing maybe 300 yards away. Might as well be 300 miles. They're not coming back. You watch them row went from the screaming, and you understand. 20 people in a boat meant for 60, but add 20 more desperate swimmers, and everyone dies. The brutal arithmetic of survival: save who you can, abandon who you must. But one boat is moving, number 14, 5th Officer Lowe, commanding. He's transferred passengers to other boats, dumped most of his crew, and is rowing back into the mass of bodies. You try to shout, but produce only a whisper. Your vocal cords are frozen meat. You watch the boat navigate through the floating dead, crew members using oars to push bodies aside like ice floes. Your raftmate died 5 minutes ago, simply stopped breathing, slipped sideways, gone. You should take his life belt, double your buoyancy, but your hands won't work, and your brain can't sequence the actions required. He floats next to you, peaceful in death, while you wage your idiot war against the inevitable. The water doesn't feel cold anymore. It feels like nothing, like floating in absence. Your body is shutting down peripherals to protect core functions: fingers, toes, ears, all sacrificed to keep your heart and brain running a few minutes longer. You're a consciousness piloting a corpse, and the controls are failing one by one. Collapsible B still floats nearby. 28 men standing on its overturned hull. They're singing to keep rhythm, coordinating movements so the boat doesn't flip. Pull for the shore, they croak, the irony lost on no one. Second Officer Lightoller stands in the middle, the senior officer who survived. He's calling out commands, organizing the dying into something resembling order, British to the end. You hear voices calling names. Anna, Friedrich, Mary, the living seeking the dead, not knowing they're shouting into a cemetery. A woman on a door near you is looking for her son, William, William, over and over, until her voice fails. You want to tell her William is gone. They're all gone. But kindness requires energy you're hoarding for heartbeats. The stars wheel overhead, and you realize you've been in the water for 30 minutes. This makes you exceptional. Most didn't last 15. Your body mass helped. The door helped. Dumb luck helped. But help is relative when you're dying by degrees. You've won extra minutes of suffering, nothing more. Movement in the water. Lowe's boat is close now, maybe 50 yards away. They're checking bodies, looking for signs of life. Most get a cursory inspection and are left to float. Occasionally, they haul someone aboard, always women or children first. Even now, the boat is filling with the mostly dead, people who might survive if they warm up fast enough. You try to signal, but can't lift your arms. Try to shout, but manage only a gurgle. The boat is moving away, following some search pattern you can't understand. This is it. Your last chance rowing away at 2 knots. You make a final effort, releasing the door and attempting to swim. You manage exactly 1 stroke before your muscles quit entirely. The water closes over your head, but physics saves you. The lifebelt jerks you to the surface, and your thrashing, pathetic as it is, creates splashing. Someone in the boat sees movement. There, pull there. Lowe's voice, authoritative even now. The boat turns, oars digging deep. They're coming for you, but you're sinking again. The lifebelt not enough anymore. Hands grab you. Strong hands attached to living arms. They haul you up and over the gunwale like landing a fish. You crash into the bottom of the boat, too cold to feel the impact. Someone says, "He's gone," but Lowe snaps, "Check again," and a flask appears at your lips, brandy that burns like life itself. You cough, sputter, and suddenly you're breathing again. The boat is full of the half-dead, women who've lost children, children who've lost mothers, men who lasted through luck or stubbornness. Everyone is past speech, reduced to animal sounds, moaning, gasping, keening. The crew rows through more bodies, but the boat is full. Lowe makes the hard choice. That's all. Boys, pull for the other boats. You're alive, but not saved. Survival requires more than rescue. It needs warmth, circulation, time around you. People who were pulled from the water are dying anyway, their bodies too damaged to recover. A woman next to you whispers, "Thank you," to no one and stops breathing. The crew doesn't even check anymore, just keeps rowing toward distant lights. As the boat pulls away from the mass of bodies, you force yourself to look back. The Atlantic is a field of white faces and dark hair, life belts keeping the dead vertical. They bob in the swells like a garden of corpses, peaceful now that the suffering has ended. You survived by minutes, by inches, by the whim of an officer who chose to return. Behind you, hundreds weren't so lucky, floating in their democracy of death, equal at last in the eyes of the sea. The Carpathia appears at dawn, like salvation made steel. You're barely conscious in the bottom of Lifeboat 14, your body a collection of parts that won't work properly. Around you, other survivors exist in various stages of death and denial. A woman holds her dead baby, rocking it gently. A man stares at his blackened fingers, frostbitten beyond saving. The night is over, but survival is still a question mark. The rescue ship lowers rope ladders and slings. For first-class survivors in their properly loaded boats, it's merely an inconvenience. For you, hauled half dead from the water, it's an impossible climb. Sailors have to descend and tie ropes around you, hauling you up like cargo. You bang against the hull, too numb to feel it, too exhausted to care. Dignity died hours ago in 28-degree water. On deck, the class system reasserts itself immediately. First-class survivors are escorted to cabins, given hot coffee and blankets, tended by the ship's doctor. You're herded with other steerage survivors to a cargo area, given a thin blanket, and largely forgotten. A harried steward brings lukewarm tea that tastes like life itself. You can't hold the cup, your fingers are still frozen claws, so another survivor helps you drink. The counting begins. Lists are compiled, names checked, cables sent. The Carpathia's wireless operator works non-stop, sending survivor names to a waiting world. But the third-class lists are last and least accurate. Your name is recorded as Johann Anderson because the officer taking names can't understand your accent through your frozen lips. You're too tired to correct him. Johann Anderson will have to do. The statistics emerge in brutal clarity. Of the 2,224 souls aboard Titanic, 710 survived. But break it down by class and gender, and the truth is uglier. 62% of first-class passengers lived, 41% of second class, only 25% of third class. For third-class men, the survival rate was 16%. For children in third class, less than half made it. The boats launched half empty while you fought through locked gates, and the numbers tell that story in corpses. Around you, survivors search for family. The Armenian girl who practiced writing Anna Tanous finds her mother. They collapse together, sobbing in a language you don't understand but completely comprehend. A Finnish man walks the deck calling his wife's name with decreasing hope. Children sit in silent clusters, waiting for parents who will never come. The Carpathia becomes a ship of orphans and widows. You learn what happened in fragments. The Californian sat 10 miles away, watching your rockets and doing nothing. Her radio operator had gone to bed. Her captain decided the distress signals were company signals. She arrives now, hours too late, to help search for bodies. The crew of the Carpathia speaks in hushed tones about what they saw in the water, the floating field of white faces, the deck chairs and doors with their cargo of the frozen dead. The conspiracy theories start immediately. Why were the boats launched half empty? Why weren't there enough for everyone? Why did officers shoot at passengers? They didn't, mostly. Why were the gates locked? Everyone has a theory. But you know the simple truth. You died because you were poor. The gates, the lies, the delays, all just symptoms of a system that valued your life at exactly 7,000 tenths, the price of a third-class ticket. But here's what historians will debate. Were you deliberately murdered or just negligently killed? The British inquiry will find no discrimination. The American one will be slightly more honest about locked gates and language barriers, but both will essentially conclude that shipping companies can't be expected to save poor people if it's inconvenient. The laws will change. Enough boats for everyone now, but only because the disaster was too public to ignore. You watch Bruce Ismay, White Star Line's managing director, hiding in a cabin. He survived in a lifeboat while his passengers died, and now he can't face the survivors. Good. Let him rot in his guilt. Captain Smith went down with his ship, earning posthumous glory. But Ismay will live with the knowledge that he pushed for speed, reduced lifeboats for deck space, and then saved himself. Some fates are worse than drowning. The miracle stories emerge too. The baker, Jofen, survived in the water for 2 hours, so drunk he couldn't feel the cold. The Navratil children, traveling under false names, are reunited with their mother through newspaper photographs. A Japanese passenger survived clinging to a door, only to face racism from Western survivors who thought he'd taken a white person's spot. Even in disaster, humanity finds ways to be small. The voyage to New York takes 3 days. 3 days of funerals for those who died aboard the Carpathia, of wireless messages seeking the lost, of survivors realizing they've lost everything: family, possessions, hope. Immigration officials board in New York Harbor, and for a moment you think even this escape might be denied. But America, shocked by the disaster, waves survivors through. You enter the promised land with nothing but the clothes on your back and frostbite scars that will ache every winter. Years later, the arguments continue. Films will be made, books written, myths created. They'll say the band played "Nearer My God to Thee." They didn't. It was autumn. They'll romanticize the first-class men who died like gentlemen while ignoring the third-class men who died like rats in a trap. They'll make it a story about love and bravery when it was really about class and cowardice. But you were there. You know the truth. The Titanic didn't sink because of ice or arrogance or fate. It sank because people like you didn't matter enough to save properly. The locked gates, the missing translators, the half-empty boats, all just business decisions that turned profitable when the ship hit ice. You survived through luck, stubbornness, and the random kindness of Fifth Officer Lowe. Hundreds of others, equally deserving, didn't. So when they build memorials and make speeches about women and children first, you remember the Irish mother who couldn't reach the boats because she didn't understand the orders. When they praise the heroic crew, you think of the officers who formed human chains to keep you back. When they call it a tragedy, you correct them. It was a crime. The only difference between murder and negligence is intent, and the White Star Line intended to save money on lifeboats and translators. Everything else was just mathematics. You settle in New York, find work, build a life on the bones of the one that sank. Sometimes, on cold nights, your hands ache where frostbite kissed them. Sometimes, you wake gasping, feeling 28-degree water close over your head. The Titanic sank in 2 hours and 40 minutes, but you've been drowning ever since. And every April 15th, you light a candle for the ones who didn't make it, not because they were heroes, but because they were people, and that should have been enough. As the years pass, the nightmares fade, but never fully disappear. You learn to live with the weight of survival, the guilt of being randomly chosen to continue when so many others, no different from you, no less deserving, fed the fishes. On quiet evenings, you tell your children about the ship, but carefully, leaving out the worst parts. The locked gates become confused directions. The screaming becomes calls for help. You sanitize horror into history because how can you explain that civilization is only 3 missed meals thick? Your frostbitten fingers never quite work right again. Every winter, they turn white and numb, remembering that April night when the Atlantic tried to claim you. You become a prophet of warmth, keeping your home heated to tropical temperatures, wearing gloves at the first hint of cold. Your family thinks it's quirky. They don't understand that your body keeps a cellular memory of dying by degrees. The other survivors stay in touch through letters and occasional gatherings. You recognize each other by what's missing: the 1,000-yard stare, the flinch at breaking glass, the way you all count like lifeboats at every public event. Together, you're a secret society of the randomly saved, bound by the knowledge that survival is neither earned nor deserved, but simply is. When the Great War comes, you're too old to fight, but you understand the young men who march off to die. Mass death is no longer abstract to you. You've seen how quickly civilization abandons its pretenses, how fast help becomes every man for himself, how the powerful save themselves while writing rules that kill the weak. The war doesn't surprise you. After Titanic, nothing surprises you. The decades blur. The Titanic becomes legend, then myth, then metaphor. Writers who weren't there craft beautiful lies about noble sacrifice. Movie makers turn industrial manslaughter into romance. The ship becomes a symbol of human hubris, as if the only lesson is don't build unsinkable ships. They miss the real lesson: don't lock the poor below decks while the rich escape in half-empty boats. You outlive most of the other survivors. One by one, the letters stop coming, the gatherings grow smaller. Soon, you're one of the last voices that can say, "I was there." Reporters occasionally find you, wanting to hear about the band's last song or the ship's final plunge. You tell them what they want to hear because the truth, that it was banal, bureaucratic murder, doesn't sell newspapers. In your final years, you return to the sea, not the North Atlantic. You'll never sail those waters again, but the gentle shores where grandchildren build sandcastles. You watch them play, carefree and confident that the world is built for their protection. You don't tell them otherwise. Let them believe in the fundamental safety of existence. They'll learn soon enough that civilization is a luxury item, first to go when the ship starts sinking. On your last night, you dream of the Titanic, but it's different now. The gates are open, the boats are full, everyone speaks the same language. The lights stay on forever, powered by engineers who survived to grow old. The water is warm as a bath. The dead float peacefully, ready to board a rescue ship that arrived in time. It's a dream of what should have been, what could have been if human beings were half as good as they pretend to be. You wake gently, no gasping, no phantom cold. Outside, the sun rises on a world that's learned nothing from that night. Ships still sink. The poor still die first. The powerful still write rules that preserve their comfort at the cost of others' lives. But somewhere, a fifth-generation descendant of a Titanic survivor counts the lifeboats at a public event, guards against cold they've never felt, and lights a candle every April 15th for reasons they can't quite explain. And perhaps that's enough. Not redemption, not justice, but remembrance. The Titanic sank in water 2 miles deep, taking 1,500 souls with her. But stories rise, truth surfaces, and as long as someone remembers that you weren't statistics, but people, that you didn't die nobly but desperately, that you were killed by poverty as surely as by ice, then perhaps those deaths mean something after all. The engines stop, the lights go out, the water rises, but the story survives, passed down through generations like frostbite scars, reminding the world that when ships sink, class determines who drowns. You close your eyes for the last time, finally warm, finally safe, carried at last to a shore where all the gates are open and all the boats have room.